Let him
give him
have
the
it.
job.
Yeah.
Michael.
FaZe Clan, $1 billion. Why not? Everything else is a unicorn right now.
Bitcoin.
Random
What's
internet
a shitcoin?
fans.
I believe in crypto.
They didn't necessarily make me happier. It's just like what my friend group also aspired to want.
And to me, that's like dysfunctional, a dysfunctional, corrupt society. But like,
It's a good way to like make a little bit of money for a long time and then lose a lot of money.
Michael, you look like you're dying.
SPAC that. I like that. That could be a song. That's catchy.
I think Akon already wrote that song. What's up, guys? Welcome back to OnlyFriends, where the smartest people I know and myself in Silicon Valley debate random stuff, including the news and or whatever else we think is interesting. So I've got Emmett, Michael, and Nikki back with me again. And today we've got a list of amazing things to talk about. But first, what have you guys been up to? Has anyone been doing anything interesting this week?
I'm moving back to San Francisco. I've been supporting my girlfriend in moving us back to San Francisco mostly, but I've been also helping get us ready to get moved back to San Francisco.
So you're the first. You're like one of the Texidus back to San Francisco, the return.
Yeah. I mean, I left right at the very beginning of COVID. That's the boomerang.
The boomerang. Yeah, you're the boomerang.
I left right at the beginning of COVID, which I fully stand behind, was a great idea because LA was amazing during COVID. There was no traffic. You had like a yard, like a yard with a pool, like amazing outdoor weather. Like it was perfect for COVID. And now like the stuff's going back to more like the way it was. And the equation is shifting back to where it was before. So I'm moving back. I just feel like the whole thing feels very rational and correct to me. I don't have any like, I feel like they were both correct moves.
I went to a wedding. I have not been to a wedding in a long time in Punta Mita, Mexico. I think there's going to be a movement against sort of like the hotels and all of the stuff. I mean, this is a very curated, small experience and everyone loved it. So it was awesome. This violin player dropped the mic as a DJ, like played house music. It was a very cool experience
Nice.
On the beach. So I was happy. But first wedding in like 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Michael, you do anything?
Neck deep in YC.
We went to Sonoma over the weekend, and Jonathan learned how to dive underwater. It was awesome. He's about 3.5, and there was another kid there who dove underwater to get a little toy truck. And Jonathan, who didn't like to put his face in the water, got very jealous of that move. And like in about 5 minutes, he was totally comfortable with me, like basically putting his hand under the water, and he would dive down and grab the truck and then jump up. And
Amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. That was
there we
great.
go. That
So cool.
Competitive spirit. He was like, fuck this.
Well, it reminds me of, I saw this amazing training thing where they were trying to get this kid to practice their like alphabet or whatever. And it was like, R, ride, right? Like S, like this is a snake. And they're showing the book and the kid is just not having any of it. So they have the other adult come in and they're playing the game with the adult. And like every time the adult gets the word right, they give them the high five and they just totally ignore the kid. They're just playing the game. And like the first 30 seconds, the kid isn't interested. And then he notices that like someone's being rewarded for something that looks fun. And then he wants his turn. He's like, well, no, you have to wait your turn now to play the alphabet game. And then the kid is just like full in it. And it's like, oh, we really do this wrong with kids. We keep trying to like tell them to do it instead of make that the thing that looks fun and cool. And then they want to do it. And I feel like little kids just want to copy the people around them. It's like hardwired into us to like imitate adults and older kids. So just expose them to the thing.
I would agree.
It is crazy. I grew up with very few rules. I had my parents for this. My mom had 3, single mom. 1 hour of TV a week, which when you told me to watch all 9 episodes of Squid Games, just like totally freaked me out. We had no friends allowed in the house because she wanted to clean up the toys, and then no soda. But everything else was game on. Like we could go out till 11 p.m.
All
at
those
night.
rules make sense to me. So no friends in the house sounds like
you can't have friends.
Just go over to their house. I don't want to deal with the mess or the noise. It actually is a single mom. It's like totally rational. Later, I wasn't a very good student. And so she made me a deal that if I maintained a 4.0, I didn't have to go to school on Mondays, which is a genius incremental sort of rule or partnership
That's a great trade.
Was the state involved in that deal, or was it just you could just do whatever you wanted, and it was like, wasn't there truancy? Like after a certain amount, you didn't go to school.
At that time, like I think now it'd be a real situation, but she called me in with a migraine every Monday, and like my math teacher, my geometry teacher was like, "I know you don't have a migraine every Monday," and I was like, "But I have an A in your class, so I don't."
What are you going to do about it?
What's the problem? Right. So actually pretty smart. But the reason I bring it up is like, I think about like what parenting rules were great as you raise your kids. Like, what would you take with you? Right. And a lot of it's not telling them what to do. It's just kind of like showing them a path of what you're enjoying. And maybe they gravitate to that. Anyway.
I would take that another step. I think being busy. I think the parents who I'm worried about are the ones who like have a little too much time to figure out how to be great parents, as opposed to the folks who are just like living their lives, enjoying themselves, like, you know, showing restraint.
That's a perfect segue into our first topic, which is Joe Lonsdale's comments on paternity leave, which I think if you haven't seen this, Joe Lonsdale, you know, famed tech investor, founder of 8VC, said about, I believe it was about Pete Buttigieg, right? Who was taking a 6-month paternity leave from his role in the administration. That's
as head of the Department of Transportation.
As head of the Department of Transportation. Let me make sure I don't get
this manager of many competent people.
Well, there's another thing in here probably, which is a question about how much you do actually as an appointed administration official. But in any case, Joe Lonsdale said, great for fathers to spend time with their kids to support moms, but any man in an important position who takes 6 months of leave for a newborn is a loser. In the old days, men had babies and worked harder to provide for their future. That's the correct masculine response. And then he was raked on Twitter, I think is probably one
dragged. Dragged is the word.
Dragged. Right, that's right. He was dragged around.
Can we like ask a question to frame this though? How do you set the first part, but not the second, like masculine, like just the first part? Do you think that the hate would have been as hateful?
I think, well, he later on said that the word loser was like unnecessary, and he like kind of took that back, which I think was pretty big of him. But if you have an important job, can you take 6 months for paternity leave or maternity leave?
Well, Justin, let's cue this up. What happens if you're president?
And you take like 6 months for paternity leave or maternity leave? I mean, personally, like there's probably a question. Like some people were saying, people responded to him, like Gary Tan, and said, you know, there's more to life than work and money, which is true, right?
I think that the president is a bad example, because I'm pretty sure in many cases in America, if the president went on vacation for 6 months, it would be net good for the country. But
thank you. Yes, got that in.
But let's assume that's not the case. Like, I do think there's such a thing as having a responsibility where your job could come first above your family, above your enjoyment, above other things in your life, above your friends. Like, I don't know if that's a healthy forever thing. Like, I don't know if you want to live your life or that's your whole life all the time, but like, I buy that. I buy that. Like, there could be such a, like, there are important jobs where like taking 6 months is a long time. I'm saying you wouldn't take, like, I don't think there's any job so important you can't take, say, 2 weeks off. Like, that's like, I don't think there are any jobs where someone taking 2 weeks off is some disaster. If you're like a leader and you can't take 2 weeks off, you've like have the wrong staff. That's like
there's certain jobs. I mean, there's certainly many jobs where we don't, you know, you don't get paternity leave, and like if you're a soldier on a tour, you don't get, you know, paternity leave.
Well, it's not practical.
There are jobs. There are definitely jobs where, I mean, at a certain, like, I think you could probably disconnect this from the debate of like whether or not there should be like paternity leave and maternity leave for like all jobs, which we probably as a society want people to take more paternity and maternity leave because it's better for your kids, and your kids are going to grow up to be like, you know, we want that as society. But there's certainly jobs where they're probably there's some set of people who are valuing it, hopefully including you, more valuable than spending time with your kids. Maybe it's just the president. Maybe it's just, like kind of like top tier of appointed officials. Maybe it's just CEOs of companies. I don't know. Like most people probably wouldn't take that trade off, nor should they. But I don't think it's like I question whether everybody in America should have 6 months of paternity leave.
Nicole, what do you think?
Personally, as CEO of Darby, when I was running our company, I got pregnant with twins. I thought I would have one child, but I was going to have two. It happened to be when we decided to raise our Series A. And like my co-founder told me, we got this, like take the time you need and trust that we will run this company like when you're gone. And so I ended up taking 6 weeks, my choice. But I'll share another experience, which is one of the big reasons I left Goldman Sachs, which is that had I taken the 4 months that, we were allowed as a woman, my colleagues would like steal clients. And like the best thing they could have done at Goldman would be to make the guys take the paternity leave that the women like probably like physically maybe needed to take. So I actually think Joe Lonsdale's comment is sad. The first part of his comment makes me sad because it's like great for men who want to support their wives. Like, it's like, well, what about just like experiencing your child yourself? Great for you, but anyway, so sad. And the second part, I think, like how strong of this guy, a social leader, to let people know that it's okay for men to step out of the workforce, trust the people that work under them, and take some time off. And I wish more men would make that statement. So I was really happy that one of our social leaders made a statement. 6 months, I didn't personally need 6 months. I don't want to comment on the time, but I mean, if I was to really step it out, 6 months feels like a lot of time. Maybe you could take 3, but I'm happy that he took it. Like, I'm really happy he took it. Yeah. I think it's really, really hard for women. Like, what's that to say? Women can't be president or vice president because what if we got pregnant and we're going for an 8-year term? Like, is that the message that we should take away? Like, that's a sad message.
Well, no one under the age of 83 is going to become president anytime soon. So I don't know if that's relevant at the moment, but in theory, I'm with you. Like as a CEO or something, maybe is more relevant example.
Joe Biden is a young man, young, strong.
I believe that Joe Biden could carry a baby to term. Well, I think it's important to take leave, paternity leave, some amount right around the baby coming out. I think it's really sad that we've created all parental leave to be around the birth, when in fact, I think some of the most important times to be with their kid is not when they're a newborn and can barely interact with the world. And I think that it would be actually really beautiful to have some form of maternity, paternity leave that is societally expected, that hits when your kid is, 4 or something, where you get some time. It's socially accepted like this, that you hit this milestone, you get some time off from work, and it's for you to spend with your kid. And I think that would be really beautiful and would be a better use of big chunk of the, like if you had 3 months, what if you didn't spend all 3 months up front?
Okay, I have 2 final thoughts on Pete, Mayor Pete taking this time. Number one is like, I think there's a question mark for elective officials in general who are appointed officials who are probably serving like sub 4 years of time. Like 6 months is a lot of that time. Like maybe they should have kids before or after being an appointed official. If you're going to take 6 months of time, I mean, that's like a lot. Second is like,
wait, can I respond to that thought though?
Sure.
The challenge with that is that in a pregnancy, a woman has a lot of medical unknowns that may span maybe 2 weeks. Like my intention with Darby was actually to take a 2-week maternity leave, right? But the problem was that like I just had some medical stuff that became 6 weeks. And honestly, it could have been 6 months. Like you just kind of enter this choice in life and you really don't physically know where it's going to take you. And so I wish that all men were just apples to apples with me, because like I would have never made that choice in certain really competitive environments when we were all kind of like peer to peer, because you're like, I don't know what I'm signing up for. Does that make sense? And so like the 6 months thing, I think guardrails women, because like you're kind of entering you're entering the metaverse of pregnancy.
No, that makes sense to me. My second point is like, I just don't, I have a kid, for the record, for people who are watching this. And I just don't get how. I understand, actually, Nikki, in the case of like with women, there's like, you're doing a lot, like you're breastfeeding, you are, there's a physical component, it's like a real effort for your body, potentially very long recovery afterwards, right? That can be complicated. And so I understand like extended maternity leave. As a guy, who didn't go through that physical component, like, I don't know what you're doing for 6 months. It doesn't apply equally to everyone, right? If you're working at McDonald's, I understand why you can't be physically co-located. Like, you need paternity leave, right? To be physically, but like for a lot of people who are working in white collar remote work, which is probably what you are doing as Secretary of Transportation, like I think there's a blend between always on, whatever, like hellscape, white, office space, like hellscape we've created for people who are working white collar jobs, and like zero, like I'm not touching my computer, don't call me, like I'm in a sacred space with my kids. I'm just saying there's something in between, I think. And what confuses me about like paternity leave specifically for the white collar worker who's working at on a corporate welfare job somewhere or in government is it's like they don't touch anywhere in between. We don't like address anything in between. We're like, it's only black and white.
No, but you're like, by taking the paternity leave, I think you're paving the way for women to feel okay to have kids at various ages. It's like, I don't, but honestly, like, I'm not sure that, I was exhausted. Thank God I had a lot of help, but just physically I had to like take 6 weeks. That's just where it went. And actually Goldman's gotten a lot better at this over the like course of the years, but like, had I known my peers like just had to take it too, it would have made me feel better. And by the way, that's your prime years, right? Like, that's the years when they want women like productive in the workforce and, all these things. So you like him taking it, I don't know what he's doing. He might be on the freaking golf course. I don't really care. He's out of the competitive like sphere in the same way I have to be. Maybe that's like type A, like psychoness of me, but No,
I get it. It's like, it's like that Harrison Bergeron story, right? Like, where everybody is hobbled to the same degree, right?
Yeah.
Vacation. Hobbled with vacation.
Guys, I think we're missing some stuff here. So one, no one should feel sorry for Joe because he phrased this tweet in the most triggering way. There was an embedded reasonable point, right? The reasonable point is America has supply chain issues. The LA port is backed up, and the Secretary of Transportation is on 6 months leave, right? Is that cool? That's the reasonable tweet. Joe's tweet was not reasonable, right? Joe's tweet is like, how do I add spice? How do I add controversy?
That's what we're talking about.
And then the controversy, exactly. And the controversy came back. So like, I don't feel sorry for him because he wrote the spicy tweet. You write the spicy tweet, you get the stuff back, right? I think this whole issue around paternity leave, one, no one forces you to take the leave. So clearly it should be offered. And two, if I'm going back to, Yale, Poli-Sci 101, John Rawls, and I'm designing leave in a veil of ignorance, and I might be working that McDonald's job, or I might be working that job where like we can't afford childcare, my parents are not close, all of these things. Taking care of a kid for the first 2 months is like a 2-person full-time job. And so if you can afford the other person, great. If you can't, it's nice that the dad has the ability to not lose their job to help bring a kid in the world when, America kind of does want more kids in America, right? Like
more kids,
we want our people to produce
more kids,
right?
good. Yes, we like kids.
So to me, this is what I hate about this whole thing. It's just that like we turn a very specific issue into this like, debate on paternity leave, which is bullshit. We're debating Pete Buttigieg. That's it. And like, that's a reasonable conversation. Like, I think turning this into a debate on paternity leave is kind of silly in my opinion.
So I just want to say, like you said, not mandatory, but where Nicole was going is where I think they've gone in Scandinavia, where it is in fact mandatory for both men and women to take leave. And actually,
we don't even have it in America by law.
Right,
so I think that we're very far away from it.
We're not quite to the mandatory stage yet.
We don't have maternity leave mandatory, or available or required, right?
Yes.
So you know, we got a lot of steps before we hit the slippery slope.
I'm not saying it's bad,
but you know, companies that offer it to women, I think like a progressive, amazing move would be not just to offer it to men, but make it mandatory. Like, and your women will stay longer. They will feel more comfortable. You will keep your talented women. Like the women that are like, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'll get canceled for this, but like the women like probably most fearful of this are you're like most competitive women who are trying to like thrive in their careers, and you're like stressed out because you have this physical thing that you're going to go do because of a certain age. Like that's just how that goes down.
All right, next topic.
Next, we got Dear OnlyFriends. As a reminder, the Dear OnlyFriends segment is where we comment on your startup's ethical issues, many ethical issues. All right, I'm going to read it out. This is from a naive founder CEO. As founder of startups serving the agile software development community, I accepted an investment from a new VC at a new fund. Let's call this person Mr. New VC. And he was effusively supportive of my role, the progress in the market I and the company had made so far. Imagine my surprise when, as soon as the money was in our bank account, Mr. New VC made known his desire to take my job as CEO. Original board members balked at the idea for several reasons, chief among them, it would put too much power in the hands of that VC. Undeterred, Mr. New VC then spearheaded the effort to identify an outside replacement for me. Shortly after that, Mr. New VC came to me and offered the following quid pro quo. You want to remain CEO and I want to own more of the company. How about if I support you keeping your job and you support me at investing further funding at an attractive price? What would you have done? Oh my God.
Blow him up on Twitter.
Blow him up on Twitter. You know what's funny is they're a new VC because no real VC would want to be the CEO of a company. Every VC would be like, every experienced VC would be like, nah.
Not going back. No, I'm
there's no way.
You know, you have your
I'm not doing it.
Either it's a great company, in which case you've got your investment in it and it's going to be awesome.
Exactly.
Or it's not, in which case, why do you want the job? Like, no.
Exactly.
Under no circumstances.
VCs are too smart.
Is it possible this person's ever been a founder? I don't even think this VC has ever been a founder because I don't think no founder would want to work on someone else's company.
Else's startup. It's hard enough working on yours.
Yeah.
Like this is probably some guy who worked as an operator or something and like has a lot of ego. He wants to be be the hot shit. He doesn't realize yet that if the company succeeds, you get to credit claim that shit all the way to the bank forever anyways.
Yeah.
And if it's like you said, if it's a failing piece of shit, you're signing up for a nightmare.
I'd get as much of this in writing as possible. And then I'd flip the table on the guy and I'd say, this is how this is going to go down. Right now, you're a flailing VC. But if I reveal all of this written communication, you will have no investments ever. So consider your VC career ruined. You don't get my CEO job because that's just not happening. And so you have a choice now. You could maybe thrive as a VC if I stay silent and you carry on, or fail if I reveal all this stuff that I've recorded in writing. Or I think that's
resign.
It, right? You could,
resign from it. You need to resign from my board. And replace him with some one of your other partners.
Get him to start communicating this stuff in writing, I think, because then when then you're like, you have a choice. You could like maybe try to be a VC, or I could like cut your legs off right now.
Yeah, you got to trap him with a recording. Like a wear a wire. Get the recording.
Meet him in Blue Bottle wearing a wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in a Blue Bottle in Mint Plaza, and I got the recording.
You know what you could do? Let him
give him the job.
Yeah.
Michael,
in fact, propose a swap of roles. Can I be the VC?
You will be the VC, and you will be the CEO. This sounds great. I cannot wait for one role.
If the VC accepts that offer, well, you know so much about them.
Oh my God. Congratulations. This is fucking genius.
Now you don't have to work on this company anymore, and you get to run this VC fund. That sounds much more fun and faster and easier. And you still own 20% of the company from being the VC. So if it happens to succeed, you're still in the green. It's great.
That guy now works for you. It's perfect in every way. Give up the role instantly.
No, you're right. Actually, Michael has that is the Galaxy Brain take on this one. Just let him have the job. You're right. Stop fighting it. Don't fight.
We were talking about how to parent kids, right? Like one of the best way to parent kids sometimes is give them what they're asking for.
Give them what they want.
Yeah.
Make it attractive as well, right? Yeah. Really go out in style. Like make that CEO job look good.
We'll throw a party for you.
All right. So, next topic. That was great. Dear OnlyFriends, we've helped at least one soul tonight. Yes. The next topic we've got on the list is FaZe Clan, which is the esports team going public in a SPAC deal worth $1 billion. They're merging with SPAC Corporation, B. Riley Corp, I think, something like that. Anyways, doesn't really matter with who. They're raising up to $291 million. Did you ever think you'd see this day happen? That's pretty crazy for a team, and especially one that has like, I don't know if you guys have been following what's happened, but like several of their members were recently in the news for foisting a like shitcoin all over, like pumping and dumping a shitcoin to like
a shitcoin,
random
What's
internet
a
fans.
I believe in crypto.
Yes, it's Save the Kids coin. There was supposedly related to saving kids.
No crypto companies are gonna pitch you guys now that you say that there's shit coins out there. I don't believe that any coins are shit coins. They're all brilliant.
They're all precious, glorious, beautiful coins, Michael. Everyone of them special in its own way.
Valuable parts of the Web3 technology stack.
Yeah. And the broader metaverse.
Yeah. Okay. So wait. Back to the issue. FaZe Clan. Do we give a shit? Is it amazing?
The only thing that I think is a little bit interesting is, I'm on a SPAC board, actually. I mean, someone like a Chamath could have, right now he has like 4 biotech SPACs, right? So these are 4 entities under one man, and maybe a couple others that are still haven't found targets yet. The original terms were like they had 24 months to find a target. So you've got 900 of these SPACs that need to find targets.
Desperately hitting up any company with any heartbeat at all.
Basically.
Like,
and so that's crazy. And if you're a founder with some revenue and some profit, it's kind of interesting.
It's like closing time at a bar, right? Like it's like 1:58 p.m. and people are like 1:58 a.m. right? And at a bar, and there's like people walking around asking other people, "Hey, you want a SPAC?
Yeah.
You want a SPAC?
You want to SPAC that? You want to SPAC that? You got some revenue?"
Yeah.
SPAC that. I like that. That could be a song. That's catchy.
I think Akon already wrote that song.
Yeah.
No, that's a
SPAC. Yeah, I can see that, right? Yeah. But I do think that's pretty interesting because it's just a pretty interesting dynamic that they have this ticking time bomb on when they have to find a target.
For people who don't know how this works, it's basically like what happens with a SPAC is the sponsor, which is like someone who's famous or like maybe potentially a good investor or, both, says like, I'm going to raise a bunch of money. I'm going to start a company that does nothing. It's just a public company and I'm going to raise a bunch of money from people. And then I'm going to merge with a company that's private and turn that private company into a public company and give them the money. And then they're going to that's the way that they become a public company. And the problem is that if you are the SPAC sponsor, you have 2 years to like go find a deal. Usually that's like the market terms, 24 months to find a deal and consummate the merger with them. And then in exchange, you get like 20% of the promote or something like that. I think that's standard. You get like 20, like if you raise $500 million, you get $100 million into this deal, right? But if you don't do any deal, then the money goes back to like all the people who invested. And so you have this insane perverse incentive to do the deal as quickly as, not as quickly, but to like do
any deal that beats the terms in any way is better than like, it's very good.
I mean, the terms are like, if you don't do a deal, you get zero.
Right. I think you actually, so you actually really want to do a deal. I think you have somewhere between $13 and $20 million on you will lose money.
Okay.
Right. So you really want to do a deal.
They want it. So are we saying that FaZe Clan is literally like scraping the bottom of private companies, or where are we in the cycle?
I actually think FaZe Clan, I don't actually know that much. Surprisingly, someone who runs a company that like involves a lot of esports, I don't understand the economics behind FaZe Clan well enough to explain whether or not I think it's a good investment or not at $1 billion. Like, who knows, right? You have to actually go like read the SPACs don't have an S1, whatever the equivalent is of like figuring out, oh, it's a good investment. But like, what I do think is that like modern creator brands, like esports brands and like creator brands are increasingly like the new brand. Like that's what's going to be the Louis Vuitton of like the 21st century is going to be a lot of stuff that's creator brand centric. And so on the one hand, probably most of them will fail because most new everything fails. But then like, I don't know if I'd be carried to short creator brands in general. Cause like that is dangerous. That could be really, you don't know which one. It's very hard to predict in fashion. And it's like a fashion brand fundamentally. All creator brands are like fashion brands. Like they're associative brands that like are about wanting to be with or like these people. Shorting that is dangerous because you never know which one's going to be like turn out to be really, really big. And brands can be quite valuable if they work. So I don't know. It's one of those things where asymmetric, probably overvalued, like most things like this, probably overvalued. But in the case where it's not overvalued, it might be quite undervalued. In which case, don't, so you got to be careful shorting something like that, I think.
That's a good point. I think that's probably the most intelligent take. Like there's the creator brands, like these creators have the opportunity to spin up really valuable brands. Like they have this huge control of purchasing power now. And so, these guys probably, it's hard to know because like their existing businesses might not be that good, but they could, I don't know, come out with a tequila. Yeah. It could be worth $1 billion in like 2 years.
Yeah. You never know. Like, it's a sort of thing where like, you actually really want a call option more than to own it. And you don't want to be shorting it too hard because like, it's a good way to like make a little bit of money for a long time and then lose a lot of money. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens. $1 billion does sound like a lot for an esports brand, like just offhand, knowing like just the net total amount of like, how big is like prize money doesn't justify that. Like you can't do the standard things that in the past have been the things you make money on in esports don't work for that. But like, that doesn't mean you can't invent a new business model. So I'm pro.
What about,
I think it's cool.
It does sound like a lot, I guess, in a vacuum, but like in today's world, everything seems like it's $1 billion company. Like every week I get another message from one of my portfolio companies, the previous company I invested in. It's like, we're raising money at $1 billion company. It's pretty, so like, I'm not surprised. FaZe Clan, $1 billion, why not? Everything else is a unicorn right now. Michael, you look like you're dying.
You've accurately assessed my feelings on the matter.
Started browsing Instagram. Well, why do you want to introduce the next topic? That was kind of like one of yours.
Yeah.
Laying flat.
So this concept of laying flat. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and like,
what is it?
You don't explain it.
It originates in China, and kind of sourcing from the this is the original source on everything, Wikipedia. There was this guy who basically, literally in April 2021, like this year, quit his job at a factory because it made him feel empty, cycled 1,300 miles, went back to his hometown, spent his time reading philosophy, doing odd jobs, and looks like he's living on about $60 a month from his savings. And the philosophy around it was kind of like, well, if you can't progress, if you can't move up, why opt into this kind of game? Why opt into the system? Maybe there's another way to live if you can't or are not interested in moving up. And it was interesting because, the Communist Party apparently, and, I'm quoting from the Wikipedia again, there was two responses. One response was like, like, can't do this. This is bad. Then there's another response that was kind of like, well, what are we doing to create an environment where this looks like a good idea? Which is, it's a very responsible response. So what do y'all think about this concept of laying flat in America? Is the American dream dead? Is this a good strategy for some? What do you think?
So you also pointed out there's like a Reddit, right, in America that's like, what was it called?
Antiwork.
Like a subreddit, Antiwork. Yes. Where people are basically saying they're going to opt out. It's like a collection of people. How many subs does this
Well, the anti-work Reddit's a little different. The anti-work Reddit,
Okay.
It's funny because the title is anti-work, but it's people basically in really shitty jobs, mostly restaurant jobs, who are quitting their jobs. I think they're getting other jobs. They're not like gonna, live like a monk, but they're basically just kind of like, and this is something we kind of talked about earlier in the week. They're in this job that sucks structurally. I think most restaurant jobs are like that. It doesn't pay very much. It's not very nice. It's physically taxing. They decided one day they don't want to do it anymore. And usually what happens is there's like the first level of managers kind of get screwed. Because the first level of management, if someone doesn't show up for work, they have to do it. The owner is sitting in some fucking fancy place somewhere. First level manager will call someone in and say, hey, someone quit. Can you work? And that person's like, no. And the manager's like, oh, well, I'm screwed. If you don't come into work, I'll get fired. You get fired. And the guy's like, all right, fuck you. I'm fired. You're like, mail me my check. And so there's the anti-work thing is much more like kind of that. Whereas like, I think that this other thing is much more like, if I'm stuck, should I continue to opt into a system where I'm structurally stuck?
I mean, I think, the anti-work thing is kind of hilarious. Well, it's not hilarious. I mean, it's really just like kind of the most bottomest rung of the workforce, like fighting with like the second most bottomest rung, right? Like you were saying, and like really the people who are like owning and the who are the capital providers and like kind of the owners, like they are just like, okay, whatever, this problem is probably going to get solved somewhere beneath my worry.
I don't get my fingers dirty. Let me keep my clean fingers.
I think with the laying flat though, I actually find it quite admirable. Like I think it's very hard to opt out of a system where like everything, all social media, all family, a lot of the normative values in your country are towards you need to work and you need to like have a job and you need to make money and you need to like progress and succeed. And those are all like human constructs of society, which we have invented, many of which make us very unhappy, right? Like I've talked about this a lot. Like, I thought I need to have $1 billion company to like be happy. And like, obviously to the outside, many people would say that's absurd, but like I had internalized those beliefs very deeply. And so for someone to be able to say like, I don't need that, I'm like going to opt out despite all these societal pressures is like very independent thinking of them, like it's very independent minded. And so I don't know, I kind of salute it.
Well, it's not new, right? Like I actually think one of the most important things about laying flat, it's described, you said monk-like, and I think that's exactly right. There have been people withdrawing from the secular world and the rat race to go live a life of contemplation and, connection with nature and the divine for thousands of years. That's a normal thing to do when presented with like otherwise, in fact, sometimes even when not presented with otherwise crap options, but like, especially when your other options being like a peasant or a factory worker, like actually that's a very reasonable response. And it's something people have done for a long time. And I agree with Justin. I think it's really like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's like it. And what's cool is when you do that, you're not scabbing against humanity. You're in the union, because what you just did is you reduce the number of people competing for those factory jobs by one. And everyone else who's competing for the factory job is better off one marginal bit. And as more people opt out, actually, it relieves pressure on the system. And the factory jobs have to get better because there's less labor available. And so to the degree it becomes a trend, it's actually good because it puts pressure on the factories to, well, you don't have a better job, you don't pay people, you don't treat them better, you're not going to have workers because they're going to go opt out. And that's like, I think, you're in some ways you're doing this service to everybody else by doing that. And I don't know. So I'm in favor, basically. I think that now I think that you can obviously go too far in a direction, right? And be like, well, I like working is like, working seems like too much work. And I don't like work. And I think, okay, that's the other like character of it. But I actually think that makes you profoundly unhappy and won't be sustainable. And people won't actually want to do it for like forever, because it's like, maybe if that's what laying flat means, if laying flat means you go like live somewhere and like play smartphone games all day, that sounds fucking horrible and like toxic for you and probably like not good for your long-term mental health. But if it means biking around the countryside and reading philosophy and presumably like talking with other people, then like, actually, that sounds like a pretty nice life. Like, I don't know if that's bad.
Does it mean I'm compromising because I aspire to this, but I can't have it, therefore, right? Therefore, I'll lay flat, which I think is admirable. Does it evolve to like, actually, not that I aspired to this, but can't have it, therefore, but actually I want that. And the one thing that I come back to, and it's probably because I was younger, I'm generally reminiscent of the past and the grass is always greener, but like, when I was in my 20s, I was a teacher and I made $48,000 a year and I was happy as fuck. I lived in a garage. I had a junky car. I had a studio that I just loved. I didn't make very much money. And I didn't know any better was a key. And then I went to this school and I learned about Wall Street and I took this job and it paid me like 10x the money. And I saw these other things that I could have. And I suddenly wanted those things, right? And yet they didn't necessarily make me happier. It's just like what my friend group also aspired to want. And so I guess where I'm going is like right now, it sounds like laying flat is I can't have that, therefore. But it might become, I don't want that. I'm actually happier riding my bike and tenting in nature and these other things. And so I don't know yet what laying flat is. Okay. To me, it sounds a little passive or compromising. But I think it could become an embracing of like, who gives a fuck about a fancy car and a fancy job? You know, I'm happy with a bike and a tent.
I've got three things on this.
I think you nailed it, though.
Okay.
I think you nailed it. Like, I think that the problem is it's not people opting. It's not, I believe in the American dream. I believe in advancement's possible, but I don't want it. Like, I actually think I don't see a path for advancement. And like, to me, you know, in the American context, I can't speak to the Chinese context. In the American context, what's scary is that like, that's so much part of our culture. And if you teach people the American dream and then you don't provide the American dream, it really attacks the fabric of America, right? And once you promise something to somebody and you don't deliver it, like they might not have even known that they deserved it, but you told them they deserved it, and then you don't deliver it, and now they feel wronged. And I think that that's where I'm more worried that this goes. Is it's this like, well, screw it. Like this is civil disobedience. If you're not giving me a path to advance, I'm going to opt out of your whole thing.
Is this something that's widespread in America, though?
Well, I don't think it's ever become something that's widespread anywhere because as I was saying, as more people, if enough people lie flat or whatever you want to call that behavior, it opens up pathways for other people because there's less competition, and therefore, like you never want to. And if you did one of them wrong, the problem with the laying flat approach is you're not very productive. Like at some level, we do need food and shelter and like stuff made, and like you could reduce the amount, but like you're not the person like reading philosophy books and biking around the countryside is not producing surplus for everybody, and like we I think it really is this issue where like actually making stuff is important, building stuff is important. I have three ideas I wanted to share on this. They all seem related to me somehow. I just want to like get them out there. So one of them is the Mr. Money Mustache community in America is all about figuring out how to extract money from a job, spend it wisely, and they have this whole system around spending it wisely, and then be able to retire when you're 30 and live a really nice life on the amount of money you've saved. And they have this whole thing where I think it's correct that like that's actually more achievable than you think, as long as you don't go indulge yourself in these things that are very expensive and don't actually produce much in the way of like extra happiness or value. Second idea is this guy, VJR, Venkatesh Rao, who's the author of the Gervais Principle. It's probably his most famous work on Twitter. And he has this whole thing around going boneless. And he's talking about it not in an economic context of laying flat against all-powerful corporation that's running you over, but rather in a political context of like you have these extremely strong ideologies that are totalizing and demand you engage with them because this is right and this is right, and everything about your behavior and what you do and where you work and how you act and who you interact with and who you approve of and don't approve of, that's all part of who you are, and you must engage with this. And he says the right way to like engage, like deal with that is not to both trying to fight it or going along with it winds up letting it control you. And the solution is to go boneless and be like, okay, sure, whatever. I guess I'll do the minimum possible to get along, but I'm just like, I'm not going to engage with you. I'm going to do what's necessary to like live my life. And then I'm going to spend my energy elsewhere. And I think there's something very similar to that about the idea of going boneless politically versus laying flat, where when things become too rigid and you don't have the ability to affect change, in many ways, the logical response is to opt out. But like, I think it has the equal dangerous side politically that it does economically, where too many people do that, and who's minding the store? Like at some level, we politically rely on people getting energized and doing stuff to stop bad things from happening. So I don't know. Those are all my thoughts I wanted to get out there. Thank you for letting me rant.
All right,
Justin,
I'm really intrigued by the mustache community.
Yeah, go check it out.
Can we do like a last minute addition topic?
Sure. What's the topic?
The billionaire tax.
My take is,
what's your cold take?
It's bad for American innovation, and the reason is because, first of all, like taxing unrealized gains is just, it's stupid. And the reason it's stupid is like if I have like shares of some company and then one person buys that shares for like 10x the previous day's value. Now that whole company, the way we measure the value of that company is we say now it's 10x, right? Because like there was liquidity at this price. Just because there's liquidity at a certain price, like there's $8 per share or whatever, like $10 a share or something, doesn't mean that there's like for some shares, doesn't mean it's like that will apply to like all shares, right? You couldn't like liquidate all of the shares at that price.
Elon's not actually worth $200 billion. Sure, yes,
exactly.
But
Elon is not actually worth. If he has 20% of Tesla's worth $1 trillion, he's not actually worth $200 billion, right? Because you can't take that value. You can't take that value out. So the point is like, that's a fake number, right? It's a made up number. It's a headline number, right? And this is why.
But Elon's still a billionaire. Can we acknowledge that he's still?
Yes. He's still worth a lot, right? He's still worth a lot. He still has a lot of economic resources. The problem is like, if you make people pay taxes on unrealized gains, then they have to there's two ways to pay those taxes. One is you sell shares to get money and you pay the taxes on those shares. And the second is you borrow money to pay taxes. In the former case, what you're effectively doing is saying American entrepreneurs who have like started companies and created great value, like Elon Musk, love him or hate him, has created incredible value for America. Obviously with Tesla, that's one aspect. With SpaceX, there's like a huge defense benefit to SpaceX in America, a strategic benefit. And like, we should celebrate that. And he is driving innovation. And then what we're doing is effectively saying, because your company's been successful, you have to now sell parts of it and you can own.
We're going to seize parts of your company.
We're going to seize parts of your company even before you are realizing any economic value for yourself from it, right? We already have a means of providing, like, when he makes money, the government makes money, which is let's say Elon has $200 billion, he wants to buy a private island worth $1 billion, right? He's got to sell $2 billion worth of shares, so he pays 50% taxes, or probably 30, whatever. His tax bracket is really high. He sells $2 billion worth of shares to get that $1 billion to get like enough money to buy his private island. But what we're saying right now is before you realize any economic benefit, you need to start selling parts of your company. And instead of having the entrepreneur run the company, entrepreneurs are proven, they've done studies, entrepreneurial-led companies are much better at creating value over time. Instead of you owning your company, we're going to have like other random people own your company, right? And even the biggest slap in the face is this does not apply to hedge funds, right? It doesn't apply to mutual funds. It doesn't apply to other taxes on unrealized gains. It's only going to apply to American entrepreneurs. And so you're taking we are so behind in so many different areas of, if we are specifically comparing ourselves to China, but like, if you like America as a bastion of liberty that is dominant in the world, spreading American values. Now, many Americans, I think, would debate whether that's true or not and say they don't like it. But like, if you like American entrepreneurship is one of the pillars, the remaining pillars of American values. And I think that like we are disincentivizing entrepreneurship. And obviously people who are starting off when they start as a new founder, they're not going to consider that as much. Like, okay, what if I become Elon Musk? Like, that's a pipe dream or whatever. But like, Elon Musk, Bezos, they're still driving incredible innovations at their companies, and they're still driving this incredible innovation in America. And we are basically saying we want to ramp that down.
So Justin, just to clarify your point, you're really attacking the method of taxation here. You're basically, you're not saying, oh, if someone has $1 billion of liquid assets, I wouldn't mind taxing them. You're saying I mind taxing this like weird.
Justin's saying he's against.
I'm saying.
Justin saying he's in favor of consumption, not wealth tax.
Yes,
okay.
I mean,
so let's take a step. So let's take a step to the side. Like, so you're basically saying the ultimate way to dodge taxes if you're a billionaire is just not to consume very much.
If you don't consume
very much.
If you don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Yes, if you don't consume, then that is the ultimate tax. I mean, it's not a tax dodge. It's the same thing is true for anyone who owns any assets, right? Like if you own normal people, right?
Let's do a house.
Millions of them.
I think let's do a house.
Or your house. A house is a great example, right?
Let's say you own a house in Austin. Let's say you bought it 2 years ago. You have an unrealized gain. Your house maybe was $500,000, and because of the market, now it's $700,000. So you have a $200,000 unrealized gain.
No, but
like,
they're not
that's an unrealized gain.
But they're not proposing an unrealized gain tax on people who own a $2 million house. I think the thing I'm just trying to
No, they're just proposing a precedent that we should tax unrealized gains, and they've set it really high, and we should all accept it. But precedents are precedents.
I know, I get that, and let's be clear.
The first income tax is 1% on over $1 million.
I'm believing the slippery slope argument completely. I'm just trying to acknowledge, I just think there's two interesting points to illustrate here. Point one is that and Elon's doing this, right? He's significantly reducing his spend, which is probably significantly reducing the amount of money he has to realize, which is probably significantly reducing his taxes. If billionaires do that, then they're not going to pay as much taxes.
What does it mean? So there's two reasons you might say that we should tax billionaires more than other people. One is that they've got plenty. And so it won't hurt, like if they're consuming way more than everyone else, right? Like that's not really fair. And it's like, okay to reduce their consumption. But if they already pre-reduced their consumption, then that argument doesn't apply. The other reason you would say it is that like you think the government will allocate the capital more efficiently and effectively than they will. Because if they're just acting as stewards of the money, if they're not consuming it, they're just a steward of the money. They're not using it for themselves. They're deciding what enterprises, where it gets allocated to. And fundamentally, you want taxes that create the incentive. The hard part about taxation is create taxes that drive the incentives for what you want. And the unrealized gain tax on billionaires sounds like a great way to really drive the private equity industry as everyone takes their big companies private to avoid the tax. And that's the real incentive you're creating. And so it matters. The actual tax you propose really matters.
I don't deny that, Emmett. And even more so, I don't know that I would support this unrealized gain tax, right? Because I think I agree with the general points being made. I think though that like if you're a government, you have to figure out how to redistribute wealth. And like we can debate that.
Why do you have to? Why do you have to figure out how to redistribute wealth?
Well, because
I feel like that's an ends, not a
tax.
That's a means, not an end.
Okay, sorry. Well, if you're a government, you've got to provide for the general welfare. So let's start with there. And then number two, different people have different advantages and talents, which causes a different level of wealth. And so if you need to provide for the general welfare, and some people have a lot more than others through talent, inherent advantages, whatever you will, you need to design a system that basically taxes the people who have more, more, right?
It's called the progressive income tax and capital gains. We've designed that system.
Exactly. And I don't think anyone's debating that's, well, maybe some would debate whether that's just, but I don't think that reasonable people would debate that that's just. I think now we've got this question of, okay, we're in a situation where we all agree that the richer people should pay more taxes. Fine. Now we have this question, okay, they're really rich people. They're people who are so rich. It used to be that when you were rich, your consumption would scale with your wealth. But at some point, you can be so wealthy that your consumption just can't scale. And then even more so, if you're wealthy and busy, then your consumption really can't scale because you're doing shit.
First of all, I question that because, I mean, you and I both have a mutual friend who has a travel startup that caters to the very rich. I remember he was pitching me this startup, and there's something like the global rich, like the top 300,000 people or something like that account for like $400 billion of travel spend or some insane amount.
Justin,
it's like,
I
maybe
don't
it was
think you're
40,
actually
40
debating
billion.
this point for real. Do you really think that Elon is spending the same percentage of his wealth on luxury when he was worth 10 million, 100 million, a billion, and then 200 billion? Do you think that this
maybe they should get to choose
spend on luxury stayed constant? Of course it didn't. And I'm not saying that's bad, dude. I'm not even saying Elon's bad. I think Elon's great. I'm just saying we have this issue, which is at extreme wealth. If your spending doesn't scale with your wealth, the progressive tax system that we created,
but your donations
doesn't work as well.
No, but
your donations could, Michael.
The problem
right?
the problem is the inheritance tax doesn't work because eventually you have to liquidate it, or we're actually very happy. If you never liquidate your money, you're effectively donating it to society. Like if you never consume any of your wealth, that wealth is effectively donated to society. Because you're not like think about the actual physics of it. Don't ignore the financial system for a second, which confuses people.
Sure.
The only way that you can having money ever like hurts someone else is if you pay a bunch of money for people to go make like a mega yacht that you like use. You've consumed this huge amount of other people's time where they're going to go around, and the thing they're doing now, our society has chosen to spend a bunch of people's time building you a mega yacht. Okay, that does hurt other people because those people could have been productively doing something else that would have been.
How does that hurt? Whoa, come on. That's putting food on their table. How does that hurt?
No, Michael, you're considering, you're thinking about the financial system. But instead of buying the mega yacht, what did you do with the money? You gave it to Tesla that opened a factory. Well, that factory employed people to build the factory to make cars. And the fact that you didn't consume the yacht, now we have a bunch of cars that other people get. That's actually good. That's much better. The bunch of cars is much better than the yacht.
I don't know why it's either the jobs in the car factory or the yacht. It's both.
It doesn't matter. The point is when you take the money and you sell it to go buy the yacht, someone else had to give you the money and they had to reduce their consumption by that much. If what you're saying is we want to ramp up consumption more in a Keynesian sense, the last thing we want is for rich people to do that consumption. You want poor people to do that consumption because poor people actually benefit from the incremental consumption.
Guys, I think that I guess I'm just making a far simpler point, right? Like, I don't know that our tax system was conceived of in a world where somebody could own, somebody could be worth 200 billion. It
doesn't matter.
That's completely backwards, right? Because the problem, like, you're considering it from a like, how do we equalize this person versus like, how do we raise the funds for the things necessary?
No, the tax system doesn't create equality at all. Come on,
then why does it matter how much someone is worth? Why does it matter?
We're deciding that the person isn't giving back enough. They're not giving back enough, right?
That. All I'm saying is that the method of taxing this person is based on consumption. And when this person...
it's income.
The consumption... no, because these people don't make income anymore, right? So the secondary method is based on consumption. It's spending, right? And when this person doesn't... You must admit that someone's spending curve does not stay constant with their level.
Wait, but hold on. Are you saying the government should just prefer to get the money now rather than later? Because we have an inheritance tax that takes that money later on.
I think that was the good point you made, right? I think that is the comeback. The comeback is
if the issue is taxing people, you want the least distortionary tax you can get. Inheritance taxes are actually fairly non-distortionary, so that's good. I would also support higher land taxes.
Emmett, I'm down with that. Like, if you basically making the case, if the counter case to this this issue around unappreciated gains was Elon's going to pay 40% estate tax, that's going to be ass tons of money. We just have to wait till he dies. I would argue that's the billionaire tax. Like that's a mechanism that survives
that is the
changes in consumption.
And that points out the real problem of our tax structure, which has nothing to do with whether we have the right inheritance taxes or income taxes or whatever, but the fact that it's so fucking complicated that you have to pay accountants, and the richer you get, the more accountants you pay, this vast amount of money. And you can actually use that. I think it's dishonorable personally, but you can use that to like effectively dodge a lot of taxes through all these tax breaks. And that's the actual problem. And adding more complexity and more taxes and more little rules doesn't solve that. You actually need to go the other direction. We need to simplify and remove taxes.
Justin, would you support Elon paying a 40% inheritance tax when he dies that like actually can pierce every trust, every legal and financial way of getting around it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we already have a huge inheritance tax, right? It's like 50% or something. And so we should just close trust loopholes, right? Like there's all these loopholes. People have trusts. They,
I think the interesting like math equation is that if Elon's worth 1 trillion today and his own choices around how he invests that wealth over the next, let's just say he lives 40 years, will ultimately result in, let's say, 2 trillion, right? And then we're going to take 40% of that 2 trillion, right? We've netted whatever, 800 million. So there's one math equation, right? That the government's kind of operating on today. And then we have this other, which is Elon's worth 1 trillion today, but every year we're going to take some now because we believe that his choices ultimately like will net this much, getting to that 2 trillion over time where we take 40%. But our choices as a government where we ilk 1% of that 1 trillion every year will like net benefit society more. Like you're just like operating on math equations, right? And I don't actually have a view on either math equation.
There's a question of what the relative risk is with those two strategies, right? Because the problem is like the government, if you have it's like decentralized allocators versus centralized allocator. In the case that you're talking about where the government is like spending his money over time or spending its money that it's harvested from Elon over time, that like you are having the government, it's doing that from all these rich people, right? And so you're like maximizing like the power of a centralized capital allocator versus what I think is like what is good about America is you have this decentralized, you have many decentralized allocators, all these rich people, all these business owners, small business owners, whatever, who are allocating how they think they should spend money. And that's how you get SpaceX, right? The government had tons and tons of funds forever that could have created SpaceX, but it took Elon to come and say, like, I have this, there's no core principle for why there can't be
including government money.
First, no. Yeah, hang
on.
That's a bullshit argument. The government was the customer. The government should own half of Tesla and half of SpaceX because, like, if the government was reasonable, it would have invested and bought equity in them. It was the primary
that's
customer.
True, and I don't.
The good news is the government's business model. Let me
finish. Let me finish. There's that is. I agree with you that the government gave debt to Tesla, right? They could have extracted like equity converts and probably should have, right? Like that's a government deal that they, could have done a better deal. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have done a better deal or like that the government shouldn't own part of Tesla right now. But what I am saying is that the government being the customer, there's many providers of services to the government who did not invent SpaceX and who did not invent Tesla. And it despite subsidies for EVs or what are effectively subsidies for rocket creators and stuff like that. But like Elon did. And so what I'm saying is that he is a superior capital allocator for these specific strategic goals. And to pretend that the government can replicate that through a central capital allocation, I think that is fake.
I don't think anyone's saying that.
That's de facto.
No. This argument is we all agree on it's good to tax like very rich people. I think we all agree you should do it in a smart way, not a dumb way that's like massively distortionary. And the big problem is actually we probably do have pretty good taxes on rich people already. There's a lot of loopholes, and it'd be better if we close. I would focus primarily on closing loopholes rather than creating new taxes, which is like how you wound up in this mess in the first place.
But I think this is where we go from theory world to practical world, because I think this is where I think politics gets tricky because people want to live in a philosophy world where it's black and white. And the reality is like, what do you do if you're a government and you can't close the loopholes? Can anyone talk about the real world?
This is a classic thing.
You can't close the loopholes.
I'm sure this is happening because the this thing is a salient thing that we're talking about. Do you know anything else in the bill? No, because we're arguing about this. This will get pulled at the last minute in order to cause everything else to sail through because it's a distraction, which is a classic legislative technique. Sorry, I have to run, unfortunately. I think I back Justin on this one, though. We need to support our American entrepreneurs and capital allocators, even though I do believe in taxing rich people more money. Like that's
tax. I mean, like if we want to tax rich people more money, that's fine. We have methods of that. Like you can have a much greater income tax, right? Like we had certain points, like this has been paraded all over, but we had like a greater than 90% income tax.
Billionaires don't make a lot of income. Justin, I think this is the
then
thing.
Tax, then increase the wealth tax.
We just have to decide why these mega brains like Elon and Steve Jobs are alive. We would prefer them to allocate the capital, right? Which I would prefer until they pass away. Or like we want to ilk it from them now. And I would say don't ilk it from them.
I got to go.
What kills me is that you can get, what kills me is you can get around the estate tax. Like we're acting like these loopholes are like, oh, but the estate tax is the end all be all. It's like, no, every one of these things is dodgeable.
Yes, and it's going to be dodgeable.
Close the loopholes.
This is going to be dodgeable too, right? Like I already am on chat thread. I'm already on chat threads with people who are like, the way to start a company now, if this passed, is to like create a fund and then like you own the fund, and then like whatever, so that you don't have to. What happens if that was the shares yourself? But like,
what happens if the battle was we can't close the loopholes? So the way that we actually do this, the dirty sausage way that this system's going to work, is pass a new tax. People respond and dodge it, then pass a new tax, and people respond or dodge it. And we all kind of tacitly agree that while that's dumb and theoretically not the way you would design it, it seems fairly functional. In practice, it's pretty functional.
I'm just saying, like, I think that's stupid, but like if you're maybe in practice, that's what we're doing. Like it seems stupid. Basically, people pay very arbitrarily different tax rates because of how good their tax strategies are, and to me that's like dysfunctional, a dysfunctional corrupt society. But like maybe that's what we're living, so fine.
And I think they'll deploy dollars into other tax efficient mechanisms. Like if that happens, we'll see a massive boom in real estate, which is a very tax efficient sort of asset class, right? Like there's already very efficient asset classes to avoid inefficient asset classes. So if we make this asset class inefficient from a tax perspective for wealthy people, like they'll find another quickly. Yeah. Like they're out there. And we'd have to close every gap, right? Like
Exactly. And we want people starting companies. We want people creating innovation, I think.
I mean, I think one interesting thing would be to force a choice where we make these, I believe, like pretty, really, really smart people, let's say Elon, because we'll stay on that, like force a choice. Okay, Elon, we don't think you're giving enough back to society right now. We were thinking of taxing you and having the government allocate the capital, but instead you can choose to donate a certain amount of money per year. And like we make donations back to society more attractive via tax policy. And then like he gets to choose whether he wants to be an allocator, whether he wants to like avoid tax, or whether he wants to like push some into donations in a more aggressive way. Anyway. That'd be
I agree. I agree with you. I think that's smarter. I think that like there was a really dumb way that we kept the peace between Russia and America for like 40 years that involved us building way more weapons than we needed to kill each other. And like objectively, academically, we would say that's dumb and a shitty allocation of capital, but it prevented nuclear war. And so I think that like the classic issue we have here is like, do we live in like this clean system that humans dirty up? And if we just all acted like strictly logically, it would all be better? Or do we live in a dirty system and then our solutions all look dirty?
Just brute force it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is like maybe a dirty solution.
All right. We're going to call it. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on this one.
We'll come back to it. We have a lot of things to come back to.
We have a lot to come back to.
I'll just go attack Joe Lonsdale now on Twitter.
Literally bounced. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next week.